So, Assert, or asserting your environment variables. This is one of these I am scratching my itch type of tools, which I wrote to fill a certain need. But first, so my name is Mikko Koivunalho. I'm a casual Perl programmer. At the moment, I am not doing Perl full-time. I use it for hobby, and sometimes I use it for work when needed to do some small scripting. And this particular need arose from data engineering, which I was doing lately. Here is a small Docker container, which I was running lately. As you can see, Perl script fetching some information, Perl script processing some information, and then Assert command used to write the data to Azure cloud. And here's how I was running it. A normal Docker run for testing the tool and the pipeline. Did you spot the typo? There was a typo. Here. Not a big one, but it definitely screwed my run. And unfortunately, it took more than 2 hours before the run reached to the point where it became evident. So, didn't want that to happen again. And what I did was I started to think about how to avoid this. I need to find a way how to ensure that my execution environment always is as it should be. And I would also need to find a way to do it separately before I run anything else, so that the run would break at the very beginning. So, Assert, a module and a package, and a executable called Assert, and available in CPAN. The executable Assert, which is being run at the beginning of a Docker run, it ensures that the environment variables match an environment description. The environment description is essentially a file, and it describes which environment variables are required by the program. The default file name is enddesk, and here's an example. First, if we look at the second row, alert email, I'm simply asserting that the variable exists and there is something in it. The second one, I'm checking that it definitely looks like a site URL or a URL address. And in the third one, simply checking that there are word characters that would constitute a GitHub token. The .enddesk file looks a lot like a .env file, actually, when you look at it. But instead of defining the variables, it defines regular expressions which are then used to control the variable's content. I'm using normal Perl extended regular expressions, and here's a few more examples of that. Most of us are familiar with .env files. Using .enddesk actually complements the .env files. You can commit the .enddesk file into your repository together with the project, and it can act as a template from which the user then can create the .env file. And this is also convenient because the .env files often end up as being part of the repository, even though they should not be committed to Git. In normal circumstances, Assert only verifies that the variables which are described are that they exist. But if you need more control over the environment, there is also the possibility to use a meta command the exact option. And this will then make Assert to ensure that the environment also does not contain any unknown variables. The meta commands, of which there is currently only one, the exact, can be used by prefixing them with a double comment marker. This is the same way as what we use also with Perl critic. So double hash, and then giving the name of the command. We can call the Assert with the command line option -- exact as well. And this will do the same thing as setting exact in the file. Or you can also negate the command by using the no prefix in it. This can be convenient if you want to use exact in production environments, but not in dev environment. To run faster and also possibly to reduce the number of errors that are printed on a screen, you can also use the parameter break at first error. So instead of getting a list of 50 different variables which are not defined in your environment, then you will just get the first one. This can be used to create what we could say an airtight container environment description. Here's an example of how I am running it. The option end description specifies where the environment description file is, and then this is just normal bash. If it breaks or if it returns other than 0, then the execution breaks and exits with 1. If you are using it in a container and you want to include it in a container build, you can use a fat-packed executable, which I've compiled readily for these cases. If for some reason you cannot use cpan or cpan-m to download it at the beginning of the Docker build, then you can fetch it directly from GitHub. It is a self-contained file, and there is no extra dependencies outside of Perl's standard distribution, so Assert is about as lean and as clean as it can be. All you need to do after fetching it is to set the executable bit, and it becomes runnable. I have described Assert as it is now, but the future might hold some improvements. Some ideas which have been floated around is to improve the .env description file for, let's say, non-Perl users, for those who find regular expressions daunting. There could be a set of predefined expressions instead. There could also be a tool which could be used to convert the .envdesk file to a regular .env file, so that when you're starting your work on a project, you have just downloaded the repository, you would just run the tool, and you would get a .env file. It could also be used perhaps to check other environment-related things, such as the existence of files or paths. It could be useful if you are, say, going to log into a certain path or certain location, but your logger isn't clever enough to create that path as it goes. And finally, a Debian installation package. And that's about it. Is there any questions? Please.
Wait, talk to the microphone so stream.
You can simply redone the presentation.
I'm
because
sorry.
we have the same we have only 10 minutes. We have 30 minutes, and we have arrived later quite old.
Yeah, well, this was a quick one, yes, but I do have a little bit of a solution for that. Any other questions?
So how I install it and how it's named the module? I see that it's a module. It's a CPAN module. This is.
Yes, it's a CPAN module. Oh, I'm sorry. It was shown in the beginning. Here. So Assert.
You can make it, maybe recap it because we have time. So.
Yep. Oh, sorry. We had a question.
Yeah, I want to ask if you do the sequence.
Yeah, that's quite all right. So since we started a bit earlier, so I'm going to recap a little bit from the beginning. So here was a Docker run that I was running a while ago. Everything seemed perfectly okay until after I had been running it for about 2 hours time, and then it broke because there was a typo in one of the environment variables which I had set. Now, luckily for me, this was just a debug run from my own laptop. But nevertheless, it made me think that there should be some kind of easy way to ensure that at least the environment variables, which are often the cause of these kind of problems, could be checked at the beginning at the beginning of the pipeline in a way that is easy to do and quick to execute. So I built Assert, and that's about it. And here is again an example of .mdesk file. So mdesk stands for environment description. And these are just normal Perl, well, extended Perl regular expressions. Okay. And I think, just a few words, perhaps again, how the mdesk and .mdesk and .env also can complement each other. I have been using .env files for quite a long time, and I find them awfully convenient. But the problem with that is that a lot of people, by accident mostly, commit them into the repo, and that means that not only do I get to see how their computer looks like, I also sometimes accidentally run it simply because I didn't know that they had committed it. So this maybe could also help to avoid that problem. So if you don't have a .env file, but you would construct it very quickly at the beginning of your programming, after you have cloned the repo and you're starting work. I work a lot with small repositories. So small repos from GitHub for different purposes. Clone, do something, fix something, and push back. So there's a lot of these kinds of files and these kind of issues. And I think, well, if you didn't hear, so there is a parameter exact that you can give when you are running it, when you're running the executable, or you can define it in the .mdesk file, which will ensure that not only will the execution break if there is problems with the defined variables, but also if there are other variables defined which you don't want to be included in the run. Docker runs should, at least in my opinion, should always be executed as cleanly as possible, so that there really shouldn't be anything except user, home, and path. Now, if there are anything else, it could be a possible attack surface. Okay, we've got a few more minutes, so I would like to present to you a sister project to Assert, which is adequately called env. And this is just another .env, really. The world is full of .env commands, that's for sure. How is this different? Well, it reads the .env file, of course, and then it converts it into environment variable commands for different shells. Now, I'm currently supporting Bourne shell, C shell, and Fish shell. It is compatible with the more restricted format which is used by Docker. As you know, there is no real standard for .env files. It is just assumed that they should be something that Bourne shell could read just like that. But this is not always the case. Docker is using a format which is far more restricted. So sometimes I'm running into compatibility issues. I want to have a .env file which is compatible both for shell as well as for Docker. There has been lately some improvement in this. I think Docker project is or has changed the definition, but I wasn't aware of it when I was not aware of these changes when I started developing it. Exports or not exporting variables to subshells can also be regulated. There might be a situation when you want your variables to not become environment variables, meaning that you only want to have them active in your current shell. So in those cases, you would simply not export them, and they would still become variables. And just like Assert, env. is also available as a self-contained executable directly from its GitHub repository. Here's a few examples, just normal evals in a shell. The first row precisely specifies that the variables are not to be exported, so they will not show up in subshells. The second one doesn't have this one, but instead it specifies where the particular file is located. So you can read a file from another directory. And finally, you can also use a variable env.filepaths to specify one or more of these .env files, instead of just having to use the one which is located in your current working directory. You can specify several. Env. is also usable in a module. And if you use it this way, then it will not automatically break the run if .env file doesn't exist, but it will just complain that. And you can even disable that one. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my small presentation, and I hope you can find Assert useful.